no mask and working on teeth appear to be one of the riskier places to come into contact with the coronavirus, and because they are potentially so close to COVID-19, at least one dentist thinks they should be at the front of the line to getting the vaccine.
Anthony, you're too smart for that. Well, he worked for Trump, so I don't know.
I didn't. Oh my God. You work for Ted Cruz, a full-on traitor. I mean, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about
somebody
so much
joy.
You missed me so much when I was on maternity leave. You missed me so much. You missed fighting with me.
I did not.
You missed fighting
I did not miss you.
You know what? That's not nasty.
Governor Ron DeSantis wouldn't even let me finish asking my question.
Stop saying that we must respect Trump supporters who believe bullshit.
Well, I was in a stroller. And so I was out there. And in fact, my mother used to have a very funny story about I was fussing and she said, Kamala, what do you want? And I said, and this is how she would say it. And she said, Kamala, what do you want? And I said, Fweedom.
No. Oh, come on.
It was a much cuter story when she would tell it, but that's the story she told.
Holy Jesus. People are practicing their Fweedom to be total jerks more than ever as we culminate. Do we culminate?
Something can culminate in something.
Okay. As the political battle royale culminates, Alice?
This is all culminating in the battle royale.
Right, yes, that's what I was saying. Yeah. In both Georgia tonight, or tomorrow if you're listening to this, it's probably over. Tonight, and then tomorrow, of course, in Washington, D.C., where 80 million people are coming from across the country and around the country to converge in Washington, D.C.
There's also about to be riots in Wisconsin.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the Blake, is it Blake?
Yeah, the Jacob Blake arresting officers who shot him and paralyzed him are... they're not being charged. So they've called in the National Guard because we live in a world where if you don't charge police officers for something based on an investigation, that you have to expect there's going to be riots. So
there's a hell of a lot going on. So tomorrow we'll probably know if the Senate is Republican or Democrat.
Maybe. Some people have been saying it's going to take days to know the result.
Why wouldn't it? But there's a chance we'll know. And if we do know, let's say the Democrats win in Georgia, that means that they've got the presidency, the Senate, and the House. While everybody's in Washington, D.C., convinced more than ever that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. Trump just tweeted a moment ago in a way that I would say could be considered less than ideally. I hope the Democrats, and even more importantly, the weak and effective Rhino section of the Republican Party, are looking at the thousands of people pouring into D.C. They won't stand for a landslide election victory to be stolen. Great. Washington is being inundated with people who don't want to see an election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats. Our country has had enough. They won't take it anymore. We hear you. We love you. From the Oval Office, Make America Great Again. So this is potentially a bad scene that could unravel here. And how historic is this? That you've got this contested election. Well, it's being contested. Whether or not it should, on the merits, be contested at all, I consider the election having been won by Joe Biden a few months ago.
If you're listening to this only in audio, I just made air quotes around contested because, I mean, all the states have sent certified electors to the federal government. I understand that, but
you've got not half the country, but...
40-something% of the country.
You've got many millions of people who are convinced that Trump won and it was stolen.
Right.
You've got hold on. Now, you've got this happening in Washington, D.C., where on the year when there was more turnout than ever for the presidential election, converging in Washington, D.C., this either performance art or real attempt by some Republican congressman to intervene somehow. The expectation that Mike Pence was going to be the trigger man tomorrow to give it over to Trump, to nullify the vote and give it to Trump. And now Pence is taking a step back, which I have been reading was expected, that he wants no part of this. And Chuck Grassley
Well, of course not. None of these people, and this is why sort of
Well, hold on. Before we start to opining on this, Alice. So you've got all of these incredible things happening, this historic stuff happening in a time when the media is continuing to stir up madness, and the left considers everybody is on their worst behavior. Just go by the open that we heard. Everybody is on their worst behavior in this country. We're at a boiling point. Washington, D.C. tomorrow, during a world pandemic where, very shortly, 400,000 Americans will be dead from the coronavirus. I mean, there is, talk about a unique moment in history that we are at. You don't get too many like this. This is a complete cluster event tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, we actually know people who are going down there.
Yeah, I don't know what you're going for. I don't know why we're going to Washington, D.C. tomorrow for the Senate ratification of an election or whatever it is, but it was never a a date before that anybody was ever watching or going to D.C. for.
Was when the Senate counted the votes of the electors.
The election by now has always been pretty much over, except maybe with the Rutherford B. Hayes election. But
that was different because in that case, there were states that actually hadn't certified any electors. There's right now, all 50 states have a set of certified electors.
Right.
There's not, which we have a system where states are allowed to send electors to Washington, D.C., on whatever basis they want, because we run separate state elections. So, and this is what I just don't understand. And someone asked me today, do you think any of this can actually happen? Can Trump still win? And I know some people are mad at me on Twitter because I don't really think Trump can still win, but I don't understand why the founders would have set up a system where each state selects electors and then the electors vote, and then whoever's in charge of the Senate can just throw that out if they feel like it.
Right.
That seems like a weird setup to me. So I don't really, and I would assume this is never, first of all, 50+% of the Senate is not going to vote to overturn the electors anyway. So we're not going to be at 50% anyway, which is what you would need in theory, I guess. But it seems odd to me. I have trouble seeing how the Supreme Court would think that that's what the founders intended, is that the Senate can just throw out the results of elections if they feel like it.
Right. Yeah, election day is not January 6th. It has not been, and it will not be.
And I feel like that would be an odd precedent to want to set going forward, that the Senate can choose whether or not to accept the results of the election.
It is not anything that can happen. That's just not the way it's going to be. This is ridiculous. Trump obviously is not giving up. You can tell by that phone call that we played a couple of days ago that he believes it. He's a true believer in that he has won this election by a landslide. Right. He only needs you to find 11,000 votes, but he absolutely won by a landslide in his mind, and that Trump voters absolutely believe it as well. And it's not hard for me to see how easy it would be to opt in to this belief system, because Trump has been mistreated, treated unfairly, lied about again and again by the establishment, by this media again and again and again for this entire time. And so it's easy.
It would be nice to think that in a world with justice, everybody was so unfair to Trump that there would be some recourse you could have. But elections happen on a date, and that's the recourse that you get, is the election happening on that date, and then, how well the states count the votes, and how well they handle signature verification and everything else. You get the result that you get, and there's, then we have to move on, because that's it would, and liberals, I understand, they thought the Trump election was illegitimate, and they felt that because some Russians made some Facebook posts that they promoted in Michigan, that it really was unfair, and they wanted there to be a way to go back. But there's just not a way to go back. We have a system where it's set up so that there's a hard date where you just move on with your life and you deal with it at the next election, and I think that energy would be better spent pointed toward that. Now, of course, and Tom and I both had people say that we're going to be proven wrong tomorrow, but so if we're proven wrong tomorrow, or is it Thursday? Yeah, it's Wednesday. If we're proven wrong tomorrow, then, we're proven wrong. But I just, I don't see it. And I think the comparisons with like Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon indicates to me that most people realize that there's not really a way to overturn the election result without something violent happening. You know, like,
Right.
unless you're talking about some kind of civil war breaking out. Like, I don't see where the path is here.
Right. And this is on Trump for allowing people to believe, but he believes.
He believes
So-
too, because he, like we've talked about before,
Right.
he is a talk radio caller, so he thinks the same thing all these other people think, which, like, that's fine. I think I'm more annoyed with the people in the Senate who are kind of cynical about this. Did you see Josh Hawley on Bret Baier last night?
I did. I didn't get it, though. I did.
Yeah, but I mean, all you need to know about it is that Baier kind of pressed Hawley on, like, what do you want out of this?
Right.
And Hawley didn't say, oh, we're going to have Trump be
He's
president
being
at
cute.
the end of all
Right.
this.
So Josh
Because
Hawley
he
and
knows
Josh
that's
Hawley
not,
and Ted Cruz have launched their presidential campaigns. This is what's
Right.
happening, among other things.
And he's trying to walk the line of, like, not really saying, like,
Right.
he didn't say, oh, well, we're going to make sure Trump is made president. That's not what Hawley said. And that's not, he's a good lawyer. Like, he went to a good law school and, you know, clerked at the Supreme Court and everything.
Right.
He knows that this isn't something that's going to happen. So he's just saying, like, well, we just want to make sure that, like, the objections are heard and that, like, our voices are heard, that we don't think this is a really legitimate result, which, like, fine. But he's also not saying that this is going to overturn the election
Right.
result.
No, he's doing constituent services. He's gone to enough town halls in his state, in all the counties, and he's seen people passionately with MAGA hats saying, we got robbed. You go back there and you make sure that everything is done to try to reclaim what was stolen from us. And he's looking at these voters and he's saying, okay, I'll go. So he's going.
Right.
He's going to put on a show for his constituents and hope that he can use it as a campaign commercial for whenever he's running for president.
Right.
And that Trump coalition, the Trump loyalists, if Donald's not running himself, remember that he did right by them. Because this
Right.
may be a true one-issue litmus test for Trump people. That were you a loyalist or were you not?
Right. And I mean, that being said, I'm also, like, I'm ready for the collapse of civilization. So, like, you should see how many cans I have in our basement right now. Tom can tell you. But if this is what this is, like, where we just can't agree to get along here, then, like, that's also that I feel is the other option. I think I see a path for Biden to become president. And I see a path for open civil war, but I don't necessarily see a path for Trump to, through the normal processes, become president for another 4 years and stuff to just go on as normal. I don't see that.
That said, I also don't think that Trump is any more destructive here. Well, the fact that he's the president, is certainly puts him in kind of a unique position. But as our politics and our culture go,
Right.
he's being no more craven than anybody else, any other of these players. I mean, Trump is being. It's obviously it's destabilizing to people in the country, makes people nervous, etc. The idea that something could happen. The media has ginned up the American people to believe that this is a dictator, a fascist who at any time would seize power, etc., etc. That said, you've got lawmakers in Massachusetts who are accepting a raise this year. So
Right.
matter of fact, one of them who went off the record accepting a raise this year of 6%, even though they've forced, all of our elected leaders have forced our economy into the toilet, have forced people to lose livelihoods, have forced people to be laid off, to have their salaries cut, to be furloughed. Almost everybody, except in government and a few others, it took a hit this year. And a state lawmaker actually said, and this is off the record, but I'm not going to tell you who said this. It said, just FYI, because we editorialized about this in my paper, to place our base pay in the hands of the governor every 2 years, which can also go down. And the Republicans who voted against the leadership stipends in 2017 were happy to take that increased pay. She said the voters passed this system at the ballot to place at the hands of the governor every 2 years, pay raises, yada yada yada. And she's saying that Republicans have taken the pay raise in the years past as well. And to which I would say to her, that isn't interesting that the first person she's blaming is the voters.
Right.
You people, how dare you pipe up and cause trouble and cause problems like this?
Mm-hmm.
You voted for this a couple of years ago. So now I would ask vile people like this, what's the difference between 2 years ago and this year? Does anything jump out at you? Is this being a special year at all? The arrogance is incredible. The entitlement mindset is incredible. That's vile. So yes, Trump keeping hope alive with all these people in Washington, D.C., that is also vile. At the same time, impeaching a guy over nothing is also vile.
Right.
These idiot morons in the media, they're also vile. Everybody has been vile. Everybody has been salty. This idiotic media now suddenly finding out that the incoming vice president is an infantile, absolute liar.
Yeah.
And I don't even care about the word liar. But once again, like the guy at the top of the ticket, she has now stolen and manufactured experiences in her life that never happened. It's incredible. That's close to a more psychological issue, which they were happy to talk about Trump doing. He never said that he said Fweedom. That was her. He never claimed to be marching in the civil rights movement. Trump, that's Joe Biden. But the fact that we're just finding out today that Kamala Harris now has this weird, fabricated life story, which she said to the faces of media people just back in July, and was never checked into by anybody in the media. They did no work to check into this ticket at all.
Well, why would you? Because she's not Trump. She doesn't lie over their sentence or something.
Well, does she not?
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a rhetorical comment.
So obviously, and so we're talking about all these things that built this to this atmosphere. So now we're finding out all these things about, my God, Kamala Harris seems to have a troubled history. You think?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
But it's like you say, though, they didn't bother to check. It's like if Sarah Huckabee Sanders makes a pie, then like the fact checkers are on it to make sure she really baked that pie. If somebody makes a Lego house, then they want to make sure that Barron really put the Legos together himself. But Kamala Harris can say anything about her life. She can tell any story about her childhood, and nobody will ever, go to any lengths to see if they can pinpoint any of that.
No, and I've had people on social media say, "Oh yeah, like Trump doesn't lie." Yeah, he's a smack talker. He does it all the time. He doesn't do that though. He doesn't place himself in places where he never was.
That's
he's
not
a
his
bleep
thing.
talker. He's a New York bleep talker. He's full of. That's one of his things, and I was fine with it because I've dealt with those people forever. Even in the phone call with the Secretary of State stuff, he was such a New Yorker. I mean, to me, that was every other third New Yorker when I was a concierge, I had to get tickets for. I'm just saying that you could be a lot of money in there for you, Tommy. Get me good tickets for the Yankees and Red Sox. I mean, I could also work with the concierge over the Colonnade, who I heard is even better than you guys. They can get us a better deal. So I'm just saying, New Yorkers are not anything that I'm not used to. So let's get into the miserable saltiness of 2021. We'll start with the CNN. This is a great three-way throwdown. So Anthony Scaramucci is on CNN. So they have him on now because he's good now because he's anti-Trump. They have Amanda Carpenter on, who's good because she's a Republican but anti-Trump. And Anna Navarro is good because she's a Republican but anti-Trump.
Again, air quotes.
Right.
Republican.
Don Lemon's in there somewhere. So Anna Navarro, the first one she hears is Anna Navarro telling Anthony Scaramucci that, hey, come on, this is a dog whistle. You know better, Anthony. You're smarter than that. And then Amanda Carpenter throws him a sucker punch, and then it goes down.
You know damn well it's a dog whistle. Anthony, you're too smart for that.
Okay.
Well, he worked for Trump, so I don't know.
Ooh.
Oh, snap.
So that's all right. Amanda Carpenter now.
Is Amanda Carpenter the one who wanted to put people on lists for working with Trump, by the way? The one that had the fight with Adriana?
Yes. Yeah. Was she the one who wanted to do the list?
I think that was the impetus for the Adriana throwdown.
She never got over that either.
Anthony!
Well, Amanda, you work for Ted Cruz. You work for Ted Cruz, a full-on traitor. I mean, what are you talking about? You don't have any standing to say that.
Excuse me?
No, tough guy. You're the one who hit him over the head with a rock, and he's also a crafty New Yorker, and he's smarter than you. So he punched back. I like Mooch. I've always liked him. I liked him when he was on the good team, and now I like him on the bad team. I just like the way, and the fact that he's quick on his feet, and he just smacked her back. And the best she has, that was, excuse me? Excuse me?
Anthony Scaramucci, I remember you going to the cameras and praising Donald Trump to the hilt. When I worked for Ted Cruz, you want to go there? He took principled constitutional stands.
You work for him?
Excuse me, what was that? You really think I should answer to you about my work history when you were Donald Trump's communications person willingly?
You took the shot, Amanda, tough guy. You took the shot.
Yeah.
And now she's personally offended. I'm a very clean Washington opportunist operator.
Isn't it just funny, though, too? Because they're all these people have absolutely zero ideology. They're willing, if the money is being with Ted Cruz or if the money is being with Trump, they'll be there. If the money is being with the Lincoln Project, if the money is being with the CNN Republican crew, who is like the good Republicans who don't really like Trump, then they'll do that. Like, they don't care. They're all grifters, and they all have a history where they've all worked for opposite teams because they literally have zero personal principles that are guiding them. They're just following the money, so they don't really care.
Absolutely. But I do love the fact that she thought she'd get the cheap shot in, and now he's taking her to the cleaners.
It's so funny that they're going after each other for people they've worked for, because they've all worked for everybody, because they're all incestuous Washington people.
Except for Scaramucci.
Well, he's an incestuous New York person, which is different.
Don't be a hypocrite on national TV. Okay. I've owned the mistake of Donald Trump. Try not to be a hypocrite on national TV.
But Anthony, you were Donald Trump's mouthpiece, and everybody knew what kind of person he was then, as he's shown himself to be now. So it's very
74 million people voted for him, Amanda.
All right, I gotta go, guys.
This is the country you're living in. 74 million people voted for him. Understand those voters. Change their will.
Okay. Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I love that because I dislike her very, very, very much. So that's over in CNN. To The View, Meghan McCain and Joy Behar also undergoing some friction.
He hasn't filled his cabinet with more progressives. Bernie Sanders also coming out saying he's angry. The idea that there isn't fighting within the Democratic Party as well.
I was talking. Right. I'm talking about
somebody answer. You missed me so much when I was on maternity leave. You missed me so much. You missed fighting with me.
I did not miss you.
Okay, somebody answer the question.
Can I weigh in?
Or I'm moving on.
I'd like to weigh in.
So nasty.
Can I weigh in?
Okay, guys,
rude. Like,
hold on. Stop. Everybody stop.
This is like a drunken sorority. This is great. I'll take it.
Why is everybody stabbing each other?
Everybody just be terrible.
I mean, shouldn't they, by the way, speaking of Republicans who are not fighting on the Trump team, like, shouldn't they all be pleased with the McCains because the McCains, as a clan, endorsed Biden and managed to deliver Arizona?
You would think, but you're not allowed to be objective in your analysis of anything whatsoever.
So they're still the enemy. So that's the thanks you get for, for the McCains being principled and they don't like Trump because he's been a total jerk about John McCain and everything else about it, which is totally understandable. And, they've been on the team of trying to defeat Trump and managed to deliver a pretty key state, I would say. I think Cindy McCain's announcement and the way Trump talked about McCain had a big impact in Arizona. I do.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you're then going to attack that group of people, did you not just see what happened? I don't get it. I don't get why they hate the McCains so much when the McCains really have been, on their side, pretty much.
Well, because Cindy McCain is the idea. I think of this is you have to totally renounce Nazism completely, and you not only do you have to get your hair shaved off to show that you've got shame, but you're not allowed to defend any pillar of any part of anything that had to do with that form of government, and so Cindy McCain is still defending conservatism in some Republicans. And no, the feeling this has been a conquering by the Democrats, and all those voices have to officially be snuffed out because you're all part of the bad team. And that's it. It's just boogeyman.
Yeah. Scaramucci worked for Trump for 11 days. He's canceled. Canceled.
He's
Done.
been backstabbing Trump now for 3 years.
No, it's not good enough. He worked for him once.
Doesn't matter.
He must pay.
Yeah, and this feeling of now it's been victory, and Trump supporters just shut up. 100 million people, whatever, voters and their affiliated.
Yeah,
loved
so
ones.
congrats, Steve Schmidt. That's what you're going to get for being one of the good ones.
Oh, well, that's going to be wonderful. But Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, and that's what essentially Lemon's saying, is enough of them, enough of the Trump people.
Who stands up when they know it's wrong and says that they're doing what's right? They will be lying to you. And you must remember them, because these men and women are only doing this because they think they have a shot at the top. That's why they're playing this game.
Never going to get it. Never going to get it.
Oh,
never going to get it. Josh Hawley, come on. Ted Cruz, Lion Ted.
That's just Lemon losing his head. But remember the song he used to sing, Never Gonna Get It? No, you're never gonna get it? Because we have a friend named Never. That's where I got it from.
But it's ironic that he's using Trump's name for Ted Cruz. Lion Ted.
Right.
Stop saying that we must respect Trump supporters who believe bullshit, because it is bullshit that you have been feeding them, the president and you.
That's right. Screw him. Screw him.
Democrats only believe absolute truth.
Think about this. When Trump won, you got to stop using this excuse, people. It makes no sense. Okay. When Trump won, you have to respect the Trump voter. You have to listen. There were so many Trump voter panels and people going to Trump country and listen. And now that Trump lost,
there's nothing CNN did more than respect the Trump voter. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing more than they were doing.
Have to respect the Trump voter. You have to
the Covington Catholic kids. They were respecting them.
Listen to them. When do you listen to the non-Trump voter? When do you listen to the people, the majority of the people?
They've been over-serving the Trump people.
Right.
People in this country, non-Trump voters. So stop saying we must listen and we must respect. You lost. You lost. People listened to you for the last 4 years, and guess what? They didn't buy the whatever it is that you were selling. Okay? So stop it. Why must people listen to the loser?
Huh.
Oh, we're all back to elections have consequences, and the winner has a mandate and all that stuff.
Although you would think that a news organization would want to listen to the loser as well. I mean, I believe that anytime anybody can get their paws on Hillary Clinton for the last 4 years, they were happy to hear her out. Listen to the losers. It's just the cravenness. I mean, he's a dummy, so that doesn't really matter. But there you go, and they're out. Like, and if you're not Trump himself, but you're a Trump-esque kind of person, oh no. You're getting put through the Trump cycle, just like Rosa Flores was when apparently it sounds like she was half beat to death by Ron DeSantis in Florida.
It was a very simple question. Why? What has gone wrong? But Governor Ron DeSantis wouldn't even let me finish asking my question. Take a listen.
So wait, the news item is that he wouldn't let a reporter finish a question? No, the news item should be his answer to a question.
Right.
No.
Because he did want to answer the question.
Right. The news item to her is, no, you know what? The lead of this is he was mean to me. He was mean to me. He didn't let me finish I had a longer question.
And the Chiron on CNN, which we really need to start dropping videos into our YouTube videos too. That is on the priority list for the podcast. I'm sorry we don't have it yet, but the Chiron on CNN during this cut that you're about to hear is that DeSantis lashes out at reporter.
Governor, what has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashed?
There's a lot of demand. I mean, I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
Just so, if you haven't seen this yet, the CNN camera is on her.
Right.
Asking the question. Because the intention of the package was to be about her question.
Of course.
Which is why she's on camera here.
Because she's the newsmaker.
Exactly. This is about her. This news story is about her.
I said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or you're going to ask a question?
She's going to give a speech.
This is how you have to treat these idiotic media people.
Right. Because she's simply Jim Acosta. This is about the question. Right. This is about the questioner. This is not about the DeSantis.
Question.
With all due respect, Governor,
you asked the question. I'm going to answer it.
I'm trying to finish my question.
No, you're giving a speech. You asked the question.
I am trying to ask you the.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3? They only got 1 question. Why do you get 3?
With all due respect, Governor, I'm just asking if I could finish my.
With all due respect, I'm just asking on behalf of the people, as a member of the Fifth Column, please. The First Amendment, the journalism. Remember, the fabric of our society, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. This is also, that's barely what I'm doing. So I'm going to give a laundry list of things that are failing right now on camera.
And then your job is to show appropriate contrition for all the things I've listed that you've done wrong. That's how media works.
Exactly. And so then we contrast you to Cuomo and Charlie Baker, who did everything right and make you look like a jerk, and then I can go home for the day.
Question.
You finished the question.
I did not. My full question is, what went wrong with the rollout of the vaccine when we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashing?
So you're repeating your question.
To complete it for you, Governor, we've seen websites crash and also senior citizens waiting overnight for the vaccine.
Where was that at?
We've seen it in Duval, Broward, Orange, and Lee County.
And why was, in Lee, why did that happen? Did you investigate why?
That's my question to you, Governor. You're the governor of the state. I'm not the governor of the state.
Okay, but you didn't investigate why that, in Lee County, why was there a big line? Did you investigate why?
Could you tell us why?
Because we distributed vaccine to hospitals, and the hospital said, first come, first serve. If you show up, we'll do it. So they didn't use a registration system. There wasn't anything that was done, and there's a lot of demand for it. So people are going to want to go ahead and get it.
So there was no plan then from the state to make sure that senior citizens didn't wait outside overnight?
So the state is not dictating to hospitals we're not dictating to Carlos Magoya how he runs his operations here. That would be a total disaster. These guys are much more competent to be able to deliver healthcare services than a state government could ever be.
No, because you're doing it in a more Trumpy way. Unlike Cuomo, who does it in a law and order way. That way he can find hospitals who give out extra surplus vaccines, instead of throwing them out. We like the law and order guys. So you're just bad. That's it. I've come here to do a story about me reacting to how bad you are. So just do the bad thing for a second and let me go home.
Governor Ron DeSantis wouldn't even let me finish asking my question.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? It wouldn't let me finish asking my well-crafted question, which was most of my story, as a matter of fact. So those are the media activists and protesters on the ground doing their mediaing. And outside of Josh Hawley's house in Washington, D.C., where his wife and newborn child were inside, protesters, the other activists and protesters known as Antifa, harassed him and his neighbors.
When democracy is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. All right, so we understand that some of Senator Hawley's neighbors may be concerned about what's going on here. We're here to visit Senator Hawley, who's the youngest senator in the Senate. He's a senator from Missouri.
Why are you disturbing our neighborhood and scaring our kids?
You can talk to your neighbor.
Why are you disturbing our kids and terrorizing their neighborhood and terrorizing the kids in the neighborhood? Talk to Senator Hawley. Talk to Senator Hawley. This not covered by the press. They don't care. They're terrorizing people. They also, a few of these thugs then went up to the door and messed around with the door or something like that. Imagine being inside and having these guys dressed like, armed guerrillas, out front, skulking around on the doorstep if you have a kid. But no, this is what you want. And by the way, this is not for me. I'm happy because I'm going to enjoy these next 4 years so freaking much. It's going to be unraveling in many ways of the culture. But hey, no, you wanted it. That's why you purchased Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They're your item, and I hope you enjoy them. Kamala Harris, this revelation about her being a freedom fighter is more of a psychological profile than anything. Mm-hmm. So she's been telling this story of... she's been telling the story that is problematic, and I'll play the Jimmy Fallon version.
Well, I was in a stroller. And so I was out there, and in fact, my mother used to have a very funny story about I was fussing, and she said, Kamala, what do you want? And I said, and this is how she would say it, and she said, Kamala, what do you want? And I said, Fweedom.
Oh, come on.
It was a much cuter story when she would tell it, but that's the story she told.
I mean, do you think that's what you get
don't worry,
instilled,
Jimmy, calm down. Okay, one, it didn't happen. Two, as it turns out, the story apparently was lifted from Martin Luther King Jr., which you would think is a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Stealing somebody else's story. Did the media look into it at all? No.
Well, she's a little young to fully claim, like Biden, that she was actually marching.
Right. But she also in July talked to the Washington Post Jonathan Capehart at a big event, a profile of Kamala Harris, and expounded on the story.
And there are some funny stories. I was just sharing with someone backstage. So I witnessed this as I write about in the book, from my stroller's eye view. And there's a funny family story about how, so my mother's marching with the extended family. I talk about like Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie in the book. And she would tell...
Maybe we'll check out that. Just to see
why doesn't somebody go interview Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie?
The story about how they're marching. And this is back when strollers didn't really have armrests and seatbelts. So they're marching.
Already a classic yarn.
Away and, shouting and all of that. And then I think it was my Uncle Freddie, looked down and looked in the stroller, which was empty, and said, "Where's Kamala?" And apparently they left me like a block behind. I'd fallen out the stroller. There you go. And then my mother would tell a funny story about how, like, one day and I was fussing, and so I'm fussing and fussing. It's much cuter when she would tell the story, but she'd say, so then she would look down at me and, Kamala, what do you want? What do you want? And I looked back up at her and I said, Fweedom!
Hear that laugh?
I'm so glad you told that story.
It's fine.
I was
Normal people laugh like that all the time.
At their own stories about themselves.
So actually, I'm just watching.
I mean, Tom, you're a funny guy. You make me laugh, I think.
Yes.
But you don't usually, when you tell stories about you doing something funny, laugh that hard at your story about yourself.
No, but hers is obviously it's a nervous laughter. She's insecure. She's telling a false story to try to win the room. No, it's true. And it's hilarious. And that story was originally, it was a mirrors MLK's account of his own, of his own story about, according to, I'm sorry, this website is terrible. A little legal girl was walking in demonstration with her mother, King said. What do you want? The policeman asked her gruffly. And the little girl looked at him straight in the eye and answered, Fweedom. So, yes.
Yeah,
so that's,
stealing stories from Martin Luther King is probably not a great look.
I wouldn't think so. In stealing the experience of the Fweedom fighters,
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is odd.
I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff.
I don't know people who do that. Now, I understand, and on social media today, people are saying, "Oh, but the Trump never lied." That's odd. Creating an experience for yourself that you weren't involved in,
right? Like
stolen valor, which is this is the civil rights version. That's odd. One, it's extremely careless.
Right.
Two, it means that you're filling a void somewhere because you think that you're deficient at something.
Right. But
in our youth, we changed America. We changed America not merely by our votes, but by our ideas as well as our ideals. When we marched, we did not march with a 14-point program. We marched to change attitudes.
But mostly we did not march at all.
Right, but don't you think that, like, people in and I'm not even saying Biden did this much because I don't know what he had anything to do with the civil rights movement at all. But like, don't you think that people we know in our town here or our previous town where they had Black Lives Matter protests, that they're going to like tell their kids that they were in the Black Lives Matter protests when they see the pictures of like the police with the tear gas and Trump marching with the Bible? They're going to essentially be like, yeah, I did that too, basically.
Yes.
And try and equate, them standing in their suburb with the average home value of $650,000 a house to like people's clashes with the police in downtown Minneapolis.
That's all role playing. But I mean, the difference is that marching in the civil rights movement in the 1960s
was actually dangerous.
Yes, it was oftentimes a life or death situation, and was not generally accepted as a positive thing in many states.
Right.
It was a risky thing to do, and it took some gumption to go do that. It took a lot of courage to do that, and so to suggest that you did it when you didn't do it is tough. And one of the things that we used to have back in the 1980s was this thing called the media. And so they would ask questions and candidates questions about this stuff.
Senators, a lot of Democratic leaders are saying that the real question is not whether you borrowed some textual material.
Oh, sorry, this is his plagiarism. No, this is also the race, I think.
But whether your vision, which is supposedly one of your strong points.
How do you like that? Stick it.
Is real, or whether it's borrowed. And they cite not only these examples, but the fact that you seek often to identify yourselves with the Kennedys and Martin Luther King and the activism of the 60s, even though your record is somewhat at odds with that you were not.
Now, Biden could learn from DeSantis in this one. He should shut this guy down as quickly as possible, because this guy's reading the charges against him.
Right.
Not greatly involved in civil rights. You were for the war.
I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware.
Same thing.
This is crazy land. This is a crazy person's thing to say. And this was when his mind was a lot more together.
I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching.
I was involved in knife fights with corn pop.
I was not anywhere else.
I was not out marching.
I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff.
What the hell is wrong with people?
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife is sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania and who come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think, is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
So we essentially, but also you hear the nice copywriting there, famous British speechwriter.
Yeah.
Ooh. So now we've got Joe Kinnock and Kamala King as president and vice president. And it'll be interesting to see. This media has been all in, and for Biden voters, this is the guy. This is the guy. You know nothing about him. All we know is that he was drummed out of national presidential politics in the 80s in disgrace.
But Democratic candidates have only gotten worse. Like, he still beat everyone in the field because the rest of the offerings were even more ridiculous.
Well, they're like, we'll take the one who's not a socialist. Don't tell us any more about him. We don't want to know. We don't want to know. But
who's not a socialist and has slightly more government experience than like being mayor of a small town or that it was. I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive. I'll put it that way. I don't know what's going to happen with either of these major parties. I certainly think. that the Democratic Party did a much better job of locking down Biden as the nominee than the Republican Party did of rallying the establishment against Trump. So I don't know. I don't know what happens now after this in terms of where the parties are going and stuff.
I don't know either. I have not known. The parties will be at the exact equilibrium with their constituents. And I think the parties will be as terrible. I mean, you look at Mitt Romney running in 2012, and with the exception of the Biden-esque psychotic story of Seamus the dog being on the roof cross country, he was as normal a person as much of a stand-up guy from business as there could ever be. Mm-hmm. But and I'm going to try to get somebody on to talk about this tomorrow. But the nice guy got trounced, beat up by the thugs. So we brought in a thug,
right?
And the thug won. But the thug acted like a thug in the White House. And now the
Democrats are crying that people acted like thugs.
Right. As, you know.
Like a bad thug. He's not even that great at it. He's not. The problem isn't that he acts like a thug. For the Democrats, the problem is that he's bad enough at it that he, like, gets caught and isn't effective.
Are you talking about Trump or Biden?
Yeah, Trump. He's not an effective thug. Not the way the Democrats are. Like
no, I mean,
like
but
Obama
actually,
right? But Obama actually used the IRS to go after people.
Oh yeah.
Trump's done nothing like that.
No, nothing close to that.
Obama spied on journalists.
Yeah,
Trump
he droned
says
Americans.
Mean things about journalists.
If Trump had droned American citizens to death while they were overseas, you would know the names of those citizens. There would be, Yusef Smith Plaza in Washington D.C. on the ground. You would never. But once again, the storytellers, the media are just they're obsessed, and a lot of them, I believe, are just imbalanced. They are. They don't want to, and they don't want to. A lot of people just want to go and fight it out on social media, and nobody wants to learn anything. Mm-hmm. And they always assume the worst about the And now, and I don't know now because so many. I don't know what's in the mind now of many Trump voters anymore, right. So it's harder for me to represent them or try to crystallize their thoughts. But on the left, the thought is that the opposition is bad, is evil, is immoral and malevolent, and that's why they don't belong in polite company, and that's why it's okay to punch them in their. I mean, these are seemingly nice people, in nice suburbs.
I think part of the problem is that the Trump voters know that, and part of the reason why they don't want to accept the results of the election and are willing to go essentially to any length here to try and prevent that result from occurring is that they can tell that the left hates them and wants to squash them with everything they can, Mm-hmm. I mean, Don Lemon hates Trump voters. He wants to stamp out their viewpoints from the country piece by piece.
Right.
And Trump voters know this.
Yes, but Don Lemon hates them because the composite that he has of them in his mind is a vile one and not similar to the real one.
But the left is not willing to, for all Don Lemon says they've spent a lot of time trying to understand Trump voters, they don't really want to change that viewpoint of Trump voters. So people who have voted for Trump know that the left hates them and wants to destroy everything that's important to them. And that's why you're seeing people go to Washington, D.C. right now, is because they feel threatened. And I know that the people that I know that are liberals would say, like, well, they weren't really threatened. This isn't how it felt for Mexicans after Trump was elected. They were really threatened by Trump, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think a lot of Christians do absolutely feel threatened by Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. I think a lot of people who have some skepticism over the government lockdowns feel threatened by Nancy Pelosi and Biden and Chuck Schumer and Tony Fauci and all these people. I think that a lot of people, who are upset that their kids haven't been in school feel threatened. I think that a lot of people who, are concerned about their way of life, about being able to access healthcare for their families, about being able to afford to pay their mortgages. I think that they are worried and do feel threatened, and this is Trump voters do feel that it's an existential threat, and that was the argument at the time when Trump was elected in 2016, was the Flight 93 election feeling, was that we have to try and get this guy in here because we have to wrecking ball these crazy people in Washington with whatever we have. And I think that the left, the attitude of the left, the Don Lemons and the Amanda Carpenters and these people saying anybody who's been within a mile of Trump, and Joy Behar yelling at Meghan McCain, you're all bad people. We don't want you here. We won't miss you. We don't need you in our country. You have no moral high ground to stand on. I don't think that has the effect they think it's going to have. This isn't going to make the Trump voters shut up and go away and accept the results of the election. This is going to make the Trump voters go to Washington and be more upset.
Oh, I think so. And also, the issue is with Don Lemon and others saying, no, their feelings, F their feelings. A nice woman I know from a nice town said, F their feelings for the next 4 years. F their feelings. Because they feel that it's time for retribution. Because they actually believe, they actually imagined in their mind that we have had a fascist for 4 years who was enslaving people and a misogynist and a rape. They believe all of their worst notions about Trump. They believe they've actualized it as if it happened. And it has not happened. It never happened ever. But, it was reinforced by media every single day. So they look back and say, oh my God, remember the Trump administration. Remember he imprisoned all the kids, the forced sterilizations and and him working with dictators and all the worst things in the world.
But they thought that about Bush too.
Well,
Bush, mostly Cheney running Bush like a puppet. But they thought that about the Bush administration.
But Bush was contrite and civil, and Trump lashed out. So now, to them, it was like, see, that's how a monster would act, and now we've got all the proof we need. And both sides are very fine people about the Nazis and the Klansmen, Trump was saying, according to them. All falsehoods. So they believe now it's retribution time. It's time for comeuppance.
Right, but they don't, they say when Trump got elected, they act like Bush was, at least he was nice, but they didn't think that at the time. Ellen still can't talk to him at a baseball game, actually, because he actually was a tyrant. And you see it starting to leak out again now that you have Josh Hawley out there. You'll see people saying, somebody said on Twitter, some lefty said oh, well, I'm really afraid that, Josh Hawley is going to be the competent fascist now that Trump was the incompetent one. They're all ready to believe that the previous Republicans were just as bad, if not worse, and that the next Republican is going to be just as bad.
And so what do you do when
2 more hogs got the fever?
When everybody's got the fever now? What do you do? How do you get unfevered? How does this happen now?
Right. Well, now both sides are fevered. And the right feels that they're justified to have a fever because the left has had a fever at them for as long as they can remember politically. Right. People said about the Tea Party movement that they were Nazis at the time. People said about Bush that he was a tyrant. I had friends in liberal Lexington who told me that they weren't going to feel safe until Bush was out of office on the 20th because they thought he was going to seize the military and grab power at the time.
Right.
They convinced themselves, they worked themselves up to believe this stuff. I remember I saw, I think it was the second Star Wars prequel, the Attack of the Clones, when it was the one where, or was that, no, the Revenge of the Sith.
Greyhounds.
Yeah, the Revenge of the Sith was the third one. And that's the one where he says, if you're not with us, you're against us in the Senate. And my friend was like, see, this is such a great metaphor about Bush and how he's acted about the war on terror. And this is so dark and Fahrenheit 9/11 was a full theater in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Oh, I'm sure. It was just crap propaganda, obviously.
But they believed this stuff. They believed it about Bush, and now they believe it about Trump. And this is why the right, though,
they had to get rid of the fish at SeaWorld, Alice. SeaWorld has the fish gone because some moron made a documentary. Oh my God, so get rid of all the freaking orcas now. My God, the orcas were SeaWorld. We're stupid people. Alice. But I say we'll be fine as long as we all still have our Fweedom.
We'll be fine as long as we keep having the Burn Barrel podcast on to work out all our fears and worries. You can find us on Twitter at Burn Barrel Pod, Facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast, the Parler app at Burn Barrel Podcast. You can send us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. And you can also check out our YouTube channel, Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel.
C'est la vie.